Hello and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist podcast. If you're watching these live, I have a special guest in my podcast studio named
Ani.
So I've been missing you, and I just got so serious with Garrett. I was like, wah, wah. Just kidding. No, it was good. It was good. But I think it's good to have different perspective. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And even with Garrett, it's good to bring him in, and then it's like, all right, go away for a minute.
You can leave now.
We had fun. It's time to move on. So anyways, but I feel like we always had a good time doing this, and you're very fact driven, and I'm the one that goes off in la la land. So I think it's a good mix. It's facts, passion, and then we both have a little bit of that just kind of intertwines.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you guys are new to the Big Money Stylist podcast, we actually started it in January. We are on episode number 45, if you can't believe it. We do one. I know, 45 seems like a lot, but we do one every week. And honestly, I didn't used to listen to podcasts before I started one. And now I listen to them quite a bit. I listen to them when I work out, when I'm driving. And I usually just go to my podcast app and I download Big Money Stylist or a few of the other podcasts that I like. And then what's cool is you can listen to in 3 speed. And I don't know if you do this, but I only listen to 3 speed. And so when I slow it down, I'm literally like, what is wrong?
Why are they talking?
Yeah, I literally am like, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? Why do I sound weird? And then I realized because I'm listening to 3 speed. But anyways, bring us in on our topic because I'm excited.
So I'm super excited about this today. So interestingly enough, this idea was birthed from actually a weekly live training that we had this Wednesday, where Garrett was talking about a lot of changes that have been happening inside the business. And one of the girls was open and honest. And she was like, I was that entitled artist. She's like,
She's a salon owner or business owner?
No, not anymore. She was just a commission artist inside of a salon. And she was like, I was completely entitled. She's like, I was part of a walkout inside of a salon. She goes, and at the time, I felt that I was, I should have had more money. They were taking too much. I wasn't getting enough. She goes, and now leaving and trying to start my own business and my own suite, I've realized, I was
a lot more work.
A total a-hole. Yeah. And I love this artist. She's kind of quirky and weird. I've just always really liked her. But I thought it was so cool to have that just amount of accountability in yourself to be like, oh.
Well, you know what? Even when I first started my brand, I always loved doing hair and felt like I had a knack for it. And just I loved it and it was fun. And I remember when I first started my brand, I was like, all right. And I started looking at top salons in LA, New York, all over the place. And I was like, I mean, of course my work is as good as theirs. And I was that asshole that didn't give them the respect for why they had gotten to where they are. And it's not necessarily just the art. It's like musicians. There's a ton of good musicians, but the ones that make it are good at business and marketing and everything else that follows. And so I was that naive asshole that was like, yeah, I'm that good. And what's funny is when I first jumped in, all of a sudden, literally within the first 6 months, I was like, fuck, this is hard. And then a year and I was like, wow, this isn't worth it. And then 2 years and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And then you get so deep where you're like, okay, either commit and go full force or don't do it. But I even remember thinking as I put myself in that place, I even was like, man, maybe my work is not as good as I thought it was. And really dialing it back in and taking accountability, I had so much more respect for people in our industry who had built big salons and big shits, regardless if I didn't even like their work. If I was like, those curls are weird, or I don't like this or that. I just was like, you know what? Amen for doing your thing. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a lot of, there's definitely an entitled and a lack of respect in our industry and in all industries if you haven't had that experience. And I actually shared a blog post where I said potential experience doesn't equate to actual experience. So people will think, well, I'm really good at this, but they lack all these other skill sets that actually make a business successful. And just because you're like, well, I potentially think I'm that good. Even in a salon, if you have a salon, a walkout in a salon, it's just mind-boggling to me because it's you got to dial it back in a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And it's crazy because I had my own suite whenever I lived in St. Louis, and that was so much work, even having a suite, because you still had to have all the licenses, you still had to have the insurance, and not only that, now you're in charge of ordering your own color, ordering your own hair, booking your own clients, doing the consultations, doing the
everything.
Oh my God, it's so much work. And it blew my mind how even selling retail, guess what? You need different licenses and taxing for that too. It's little things you don't think about. You assume you're just gonna walk in and be like, hello world. I'm here.
That's actually why I moved moved into owning a salon, I've always been a renter. I never worked in a salon commission. I did a suite like you, and I always would go to salons and be a renter. And I remember just thinking, like, I'm so tired. I'm doing all of my own follow-up. I'm doing all of my own booking. Plus, I'm behind the chair. And we see this a lot in our industry where they're like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't have time. But it's because they're doing everything down to like the follow-up, the email, like everything. Plus, then it's like just stalking the color and making sure you have licenses. And there's just so many little details, even if you're on your own. And I think like I had gotten to this place where I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this much. And maybe if I open a salon, I can hire people out and have them help me and whatever. But even then I'm like learning with myself. I'm like, shit, that's kind of hard too. Like it's never as easy as you think ever. So.
And I think so. What I think artists don't realize is being a salon owner, or let's just say business owner in general, there's so much more behind it than you expect.
Right.
And I feel sometimes we forget to put ourselves in other people's shoes before we're so quick to like judge and be like, well, you're being an a-hole and you're doing this and you're doing that. And another perfect example is, and let me say, with a business owner, because you own a salon and you BMS and NBR and DKW, all that, and Garrett has 10,000 companies, like it's so much work. I don't know. I think it was 7 at one point, might be 17 now. I can never keep track.
He's pumping the brakes. He's dialing it in.
I saw the stack this morning. Very interesting. Yeah. Yes. And so inside of that, you not only have to obviously keep the company running and make sure that it actually makes money, because a company that doesn't make money is not
worth it. Why are you doing it? It's just more stress and
it's pointless. Yeah. But on top of that,
it's a life learning experience is what it is.
Great. Well, I think you can find cheaper life learning experiences, guys.
Exactly.
Read a book, please.
Yeah.
But inside of that, now you also have a lot of hard decisions that you have to make.
Right.
And these are decisions that constantly fall on you. And at the end of the day, like, you can get opinions from other people, and that's fine.
Right.
But the final say-so will forever fall on you.
Right.
So let me ask you, have you ever, I'll ask it two different ways.
Okay.
Have you ever been in a salon that you did not own, that a decision was made, and you were like, I hate this. Don't like this at all?
I've always done my own thing. So, like, before I owned a salon, any decision I made was, like, on me. And I don't think so, because, I mean, ask me the other question the other way.
Okay, let me go. I'll ask you a different one.
I was like, I don't know.
You're like, no, I got this. And that has been pretty good. Well, so before I actually went to do my own suite, I worked commission inside of a salon. I was commission, and then I was booth rent. But it was a ton of stations, and like we all had like our own station.
Right.
And it was cool, but I would realize like, yes, some of the decisions that the salon owner made, I would sit there and be like, what in the ever-loving hell are you thinking? Like, this is a terrible idea. I can't believe you hired her. Like, why are you doing this? Why are we not doing that? And it was just so it's very easy to come from a place of, I don't want to say judgment, but it is judgment.
No, it is. It is. Like, you're naive. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Literally you're naive. And like I said in the beginning, when I started my brand, I was just like, well, I could do that, you know. I can only speak from experience. Like I'm not just like pulling this shit out of my ass. Like, I literally have gone through so much, and I'm 8 years into my brand, and there was a few like humbling years for me. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so sometimes, like, when I see people in our network or whatever, and they're like, they have these experiences where they're just like, I got this, and I'm like, okay, like, as your coach even, I'm like, okay, you'll learn what you need to learn, you know what I mean? And you'll figure it out, and you'll have respect as you go through it, and that's just part of the game. And I even became a salon owner because when we started our education, I did it backwards. So, like, I started doing hair, but I always loved teaching, and I felt like the MBR skill, like, even though I was doing my own thing, it was such a great moneymaker. I mean, every salon that I ever worked in, I've worked in over a dozen salons and lived in 4 different states. And everywhere I lived and worked, like, women were always like, oh my God, all you do is extensions all day long. And I think they kind of knew it was good money. And so I looked at it as like, this is such a cool tool to give people to like learn and grow from it. And so I started teaching right out of the gate. But what I didn't know how to really do was like own a salon or own a business. I knew how to like brand and market, and I was really good at hair, but I didn't have this other piece of the puzzle, which was literally just owning a salon. And in our education program, we started to get lots of salon owners, and I was like, God, to build my own credibility, if we're going to educate hairstylists, I have to go through owning a salon. And I just was like, so I just wanted to, like, every friend I'd ever had in the industry or in all the states and all the salons that I worked at, every salon owner just looked like they had to heavily medicate. Like, it just, like, it seemed like so much stress for not, it very few were super successful. And a lot of them were just like, God, for as much work as I'm doing, it's not even worth the pay. And so I didn't, for that reason, I didn't want to be a salon owner, but I became a salon owner because I wanted to build credibility with inside of our education. And now my new goal was like, hey, I have to create systems and structure, and I have to create a salon that actually works, which means everything that's been taught in our industry up to this point is clearly not working at some level, so we have to tweak it. And I've gone through so many growing pains myself and humbling experiences myself, but I realized early on in business, if you can't dial it back in, and if you can't like humble yourself, and if you can't figure out how to grow out of a situation that you put yourself in, you will never get as big as you want to be. And because I like am so far in, I'm like, no, this has to succeed, and it will.
Well, and it's interesting. One of our artists, I won't use her actual name, so we'll call her Sally. I love her. She is amazing. She's been inside. She's done all the Warrior Women stuff. She's a mom, a wife, a salon owner. She's basically just a complete and total badass. She's amazing. And she texted me, this was maybe last week, a couple weeks ago, and she was like, Ani, I'm going to have a meltdown. I'm like, what's up? I'm just going to call her Sally. I'm like, what's up, Sally? She said, I had a walkout in my salon last night. I said, what happened? She said 3 girls from like, I guess she does like esthetician side as well. She's like, all 3 of them walked out together. I said, what happened? She's like, well, they left me a note. And the ringleader of them basically said that they do not like, because she's obviously been implementing a lot that we teach inside of BMS and making changes so the salon can grow.
Right. And be
kind
profitable.
of, yes, profitable and function without her being there because oh my God, she has a brand new baby.
Right.
It's a tiny baby, like 6 months old.
Right.
And so, well, no, it has to be 7-8 months now. And she said that the letter was basically like, we don't like any of the changes that you're making. We don't like anything that you're doing. We don't like this Kool-Aid that you're drinking. So I really hope you can get your head out of your ass. And that was it. And so I'm reading this. And I know this artist personally. I've spent a lot of time with her. Like even the Warrior Week thing that I did with her, she was in it. So I've like really bonded with her. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, there is no one that comes from a place of more like caring and love than Sally. Like she genuinely cares about everybody. And it blew my mind that because she took a stand for herself, for her business and said, you know what, this doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for my husband. It doesn't work for our kids. Like I need to change this for my own life. So I don't know, I can maybe survive and actually be with my baby. That these 3 women were like, well, screw you. And they just up and left.
Yeah.
And they don't
I think people think of change as like betrayal, though. Do you know what I mean? Even as hard as you nail it into them, like, we have to have a successful business. Like, we have to, or this doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? Even inside my own salon, I'm like, I constantly feel like the bad guy. Garrett and I are always like feeling like that. But I'm like, we cannot teach. We are not just a salon. We are an education company. And I morally we can't. Like what advice that we were giving people even about commissions and stuff, they were like, I'm losing my ass. And I'm like, you're right. We need to lower commissions. So we made that change inside of our own salon so that, because we can't teach something that's not working to students. We can't like put up a blinder and be like, oh, it's fine. Just, it's fine. You just need more stylists. If it's not working, then our education is not working. Yeah, and then we're a lie as an education company. So we have to make decisions based on it's a business. And it sucks because when people walk out in Sally's situation, it's hard, but you have to understand if you're a business owner and you have to make these changes, you have to understand that the old frame in which you operated in, you don't want to be in that frame. And those who don't want to be in the new frame with you, you have to be prepared to let them go. And that's just business. And so it's hard because you have to make changes, but you can't expect everybody to keep up with your changes. But you have to have enough courage to know that if this happens, that you can rebuild it based on these new changes and create a whole new environment for yourself. So Sally, I feel ya, and I hope that, I don't know where she's at right now, but.
Well, and it's crazy because what I think is interesting is that artists don't really, or really people, humans in general, never put themselves in the shoes of someone else. So here's what those 3 little estheticians that did, here's what they don't realize. Sally, in order to make sure that the money, like the salon was still running, her remaining artists could like keep growing, she could keep providing them with whatever they needed, she actually had a car that she had paid cash for. She ended up taking that car, selling it to have more cash to pour into the business while she filled those 3 spots.
Right.
Look at what she, as a business owner, as a mom, as a wife, as an artist, was willing to do and the lengths she was willing to go to make sure that this business survived, not just for her family, but for the people that were left.
Right.
But that I feel is the hard thing that a lot of artists or people who work inside of a company but don't own the company that they don't see.
Right.
They see like the good part. They say, well, of course you're making money. Look how big this is. Like, look how many people you have. But
and you start kind of like doing the numbers, but you don't really know the numbers of the business owner. Like, you just don't. Like, people don't. And you know what? Garrett and I were fortunate enough to where we've gotten our other businesses built, or where we didn't have to have loans and things like that. But still, we like put in a huge chunk of cash. I mean, I just bought my salon. It was $1.3 million to buy it.
To renovate it was $400,000.
Yeah, I didn't just like, I didn't take out a loan. Like, we came out of pocket to build this beautiful environment that we wanted. And so people like, they're like, well, yeah, but that's just the build out, and they don't factor that in. Do you know what I mean? You're like, okay, well, I'm going to be paying for that for the next 10 years. So I hope this salons, you know, and like a lot of people who take out loans, like they're paying payments on their salons and all these things. And like literally they have to get to like 5, 6, 7 years in before they get the profitable portion where they're not having to pay so much off on their loans or their property or whatever it is. And a lot of times business owners are like, fuck it, like 5 years in, like it's not worth it anymore. Do you know what I mean? So nobody takes into account like things like that. And artists will take in like, oh, well, I am going to do the numbers and I can go rent this down the street for $1,000. And you're like, okay.
And let me tell you, I have been the person to move down the street, which at the time I wasn't even doing extensions, but having had my own suite, not even a full salon, like I was not in charge of utilities, I was not in charge of water, like there was a lot I was still not in charge of being in a suite.
But it's still a lot of work, don't you think?
Oh my, it is so much work.
Like when I was doing it all on my own, I was exhausted. I was making good money and I had no other stylist. I was in my own little suite, doing my own little thing, doing my own marketing, and I was fucking exhausted. Like, I was making good money, but I was working. I was like, I don't want to work this much anymore, you know?
And you just don't realize the little things that add up. Because even then, having my own suite, like I didn't pay someone to come clean it. So guess what? That means I had to come in and clean it. I had to take all the products off the shelf. I had to dust all of that. Like I had to do everything. I had to make sure my licenses were up. I had to make sure that I was paying the taxes, given I didn't account for that, but it doesn't matter. These are still little things that have to be done. And I just think it falls down on the salon owner, the business owner is the one who has to make the hard decisions, because at the end of the day, let me tell you, you are the one who's taken all the risk. You just have millions of dollars in, hundreds of thousands of dollars in, and at any point I could literally stand up and say, well, Danielle, fuck you, I'm out. And guess what? I leave with no risk to me. Nothing. I see that, like, having been in a suite where I'm like, oh my God, I have to pay for insurances. Even the old salon I worked at, there were so many stylists in that salon. Oh my God, the AC broke one time. That was money. The washing machine broke. That was money.
And in extensions, like if you have a crazy client, like that happens all the time. Like there's so many times just to cover my own ass in my salon, I'm like, give them new hair. It's not worth it. Give them new hair. And that adds up. Do you know what I mean? You're like just constantly comping clients. And in the beginning, when I didn't have the money, when I had my own suite, when I didn't have the money to give them new hair, guess what? Clients would like come after me, like, you know, the crazy ones. And all of a sudden you're like, what the and there's like all this legality or bad Yelp reviews or all this shit. And you're like, and artists are stuck in this hard place because they're like, I can't even afford to give you a free service. And so I'm getting fucked over because you're crazy.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so there's even that risk inside of a salon where to cover my own ass, I'm like, we deliver experience. If they need new hair, this, and then, you know what I mean? So there's so many little things that you don't know until you actually put yourself in the shoes. Like, it is what it is.
So the real question is, what do you not know that you don't know at this point?
Nothing, because you can't know unless you're willing to jump out and experience it.
It's one of those things, like, you can read about the struggle of things. You can read about the struggle of not having money, of going hungry, of having like, even right now, there's insane California fires, and someone just messaged me on Instagram and said my aunt and my grandma both had their houses burned down. I can read it, I can feel it, but you never truly know what it's like until it's you, like, in that hot seat.
You can have empathy, but
you'll never truly understand.
Yep.
So here's what I want to challenge you listening to do. Are you a business owner or are you an artist? And inside of that, if you are the artist or you're an employee, because it doesn't just relate to hair, guys. This is every single business.
Right.
Have you been the one to give the owner an extra hard time? But inside of that, have you ever really gone into their shoes and thought about the decisions they have to make, the weight that is carried constantly with owning a business.
Well, and only an entrepreneur can really have that appreciation and respect. Like, and like somebody who's employed by an entrepreneur can't truly fully appreciate it. They can do their numbers in the head, they can make assumptions all day long, but if you don't actually put yourself in that situation, you don't know. And again, I was that asshole, but I wanted to become more and learn more. And when things got hard for me, I just kept pushing through. And that's why we've had the success we have in our business, because I took it as like, this sucks and we're going to grow through it and learn from it. And each new thing, I figure it out along the way. And I think that's what a good entrepreneur, a good business person does.
And that's really why I have so much love and respect for BMS, because I started off, I was like commission, and then I went to my own suite and I grew, and it was painful and it was hard, and there was like beautiful parts in it too, but it was that pain that kept pushing me like, okay, well, this didn't work. I'm never doing that again. I will never experience this again. So what do I have to do to make sure that never happens?
So I'm going to ask you like a serious question. Like, what happened like with you in the last like few weeks? How did you personally like dial it back in and just literally like, because you were making good money in your suite?
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, you make good money here, but like what brings you here where you're kind of like, this is where I want to be? Is it like purpose driven? Is it like what shifted in you in the last couple of weeks where you're like, what the fuck? Because your energy has changed. So like a lot of people in our network or people listening to the show, you might have noticed Ani disappeared for a minute and she came back. But like, it's because I'm like, fuck yeah, you're back. Or yeah, you're back. So what, I just want to ask you, and I know I just threw you under the spot, like what do you feel like literally like shifted in you?
So I feel like with me, obviously since the summer, there has been chaos in and out. And I know with what happened with me, it threw me into chaos. Mm-hmm. And it was hard to get out of that place. So I feel in the past few weeks, I've been doing a lot of work just literally on myself. And I came to a point where I had to literally cut everybody off. I stopped talking to people. I stopped hearing, like, people would still call me and talk, but when it comes to like opinions and voices, like I had to literally stop because it's one of those things where like you pick up a shirt, imagine you're shopping with a friend and you pick up a shirt and you're like, I think this is cute. And you hold it up and they look and they're like, ugh. And then all of a sudden you look at the shirt.
Your decision.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, do I not like this shirt anymore?
Yeah. You question your liking it.
Yes. And so I feel like that was kind of where my head was at. And so I actually started doing a lot of work with the warrior weird, like the men's side of everything. And I just realized I needed to take a step back. I needed to just cut off all the noise, cut off all the chaos, and just hear me. And inside of that, it was like, fuck, dude, like this, me being here for BMS and being here with everyone was the goal that I had since literally day one of my very first BMS. And there's no way that I have worked this hard and sacrificed so much inside of every aspect of my life to give it up because there's a little bit of chaos. Is that the person who I'm going to be? That the minute it gets hard, I give in? That the minute it gets hard, I give up because of what?
Right.
And so I had to realize, I'm like, shit, I want to be here. Yes, it's chaotic. It's crazy. I'm crazy. You're crazy. Gary's crazy. We're all a little insane, which is why we've said we're changing this industry. We won't stand for how it's been the way it is. And inside of that, I just knew I am not done here. There's not a chance in hell I am leaving. You will have to fire me if you ever want me gone. Like, there's no way. I love this too much. I love the team. I love what we stand for. I love what we do. And in that moment, I was like, I'm not leaving. I am staying and I will continue forward. And I've had to remind myself I'm 28 years old. I understand in all technicality I'm an adult, but I don't feel that way some days. I'm the youngest trainer here by almost a decade. And if I can be here among people who have decades of experience and growth ahead of me, why would I not want to learn from you guys and push and grow? Who the hell am I going to be in 5 years? I don't know. But I know that was it for me. Like it was just a feeling of like, you are not done.
Yeah.
And don't you fucking dare give up when it gets hard.
I love that you just said that, like, you kind of distanced yourself and just really tapped in, because I know you've heard this story so many times where me and Garrett were like, fuck it, we left our families, our religion, our friends, like everything. I know you're not married, but I mean, I was married at the time. So and I felt very alone even sometimes being married to Garrett. But we got to this place where we had to let go of all outside noise. Yes. And when I felt like I was in my darkest hours, I was in charge of picking myself back up. And I knew not a fucking person was in my head telling me go this way or this way, because I fucking blocked them because I knew I needed to. I knew I needed to get clarity with myself, and whatever decisions and whatever moves we were making for myself and my family, and I had 2 children, had to be on my fucking terms and my decision. And I had kept having multiple times like that where literally like on the ground crying, like dark hours and nights where you feel so alone. Just beat. And then that's when I believe like that higher voice comes in and is like, no fucking way, Ani. No fucking way. You saw that vision. You hold strong to that decision. You are a bigger and better person than that. You fucking hold on to this. And I'm so glad that you shared that right now, because that's why, even for me, we've gotten to the place we have, because so many dark nights, I literally was like, I can't do it. And then I made the choice to do it for myself, regardless what even Garrett said at that time. And I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally, I got Garrett on board. But it took me just being like, tunnel vision. And in the beginning, when artists like ask, like, how did you get it to this point? I'm like, I just fucking put the blinders on and I worked really fucking hard. And on that note, even too, though, like this last year, I finally like relaxed a little bit. And I was talking about this in my Date Your Wife podcast with Garrett. And I was like, you know what? As a business owner, like I was just tired. And so I was like, cool, peace out. I'm done. And so I just kind of like stepped too far out. Do you know what I mean? And I'm realizing as a business owner, I'm like, because I had this story that like, I don't want to create more stress in my life, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to go back to working so hard. And so I just kind of like checked out. You know what I mean? I checked out of our education. I just kind of checked out, and I was the face of the brand, and I would do hair, and it was just like a really like light year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but what's weird, I'll tell you, is I felt like some part of me was missing. Like there was a piece of me missing, and I was like, I want to get back in, but now I felt like I had lost the trust of like my stylists, people that had worked with me, people in my education, because I decided to go absent for like almost a year because I was just fucking tired. And so the lesson that I learned out of all of it was like, okay, Danielle, you can still be here. You don't have to be as involved, but you have to be somewhat involved. You know what I mean? Because you get the respect of your artists and your community and everything else. And so that's kind of like this next year, I'm like, that's my sweet spot and that's where I need to be. And I'm always trying to find like my balance for what works for me. But anyways, we kind of went off, but
no, but I just, we're coming up to the end, but I want to address what you said, that there are nights where you're literally just laying there and you're like, I can't. I have had those where I'm at my house and I'm like melting down and I'm like, this is it. Like, I cannot do this. And where you almost start to question yourself, like, am I even supposed to be here?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be training people? Am I even good enough to be this? Like, what?
And then
what
that voice kicks in.
Yes. And then I'm like, it's almost like, fuck you. Yes, you're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Yes, like, look at what you've done. Look at what you've created. Look at how far I have grown. Oh my, and not just like, yes, as an artist, yes, as a trainer, but I truly believe as a human being, like even these past 6 months have changed me radically as a person. And I'm just so grateful for that, is really what it is. And in that, like, it's kept coming back. I'm like, you're not done. You are not done. You push through, like, just like you tell all your artists, it's going to get dark. It gets hard. Like, don't you dare give up. I'm like, how could I ever give up on myself?
Right. So. And that's what I like that you said that, because it really just becomes down to a belief in ourselves. And I think that like we'll have a vision of where we can go and what we want to do, and we believe in ourselves in that moment where we just see it, but it's not hard yet. But it's in those moments where it gets dark and it gets hard that your true colors show up. So like throughout everything that's gone on in my business, you like the fact like where you're at sitting here with me right now, I'm like, fuck yeah, because I saw that in you and I knew that you'd be here. And I'm like, you turned the corner, because I had to turn so many corners to create what I did in my business. And I just kept waiting for everybody on my team to turn the corner with me. And everybody would turn, and then they'd hit a corner where they're like, I'm out. I hit too many corners and I'm out. And I feel like you like made it through the round. And I'm like, yeah, because the bigger you get in business, the harder the fucking corners get. And it's like, you have to go into it as like, all right, I'm not quitting around every corner. I'm just going to continue to go on. And then it's like you said, like that voice comes in, is like, remember your vision. Remember when you said you would do whatever you had to do to get to that vision? Well, guess what? Here's another corner, fucker. And you're like, yeah.
And it's the universe testing you. Like, you said you would do whatever. Well, here it it is. Are you still committed to doing whatever it takes? And I sat there and I was like, for a minute, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know. And then I was like, all right. It was literally like me yelling at myself, like, are you kidding me? After everything you've been through, this is it. Don't you dare.
Yeah, and then you're like mad at yourself and you're like, oh, I'm doing this.
Well, now I know if I made it through this six months, I'm like, bring it on, 2019.
But you have to face every challenge gets harder. You can't move on. You have to push your threshold. And we teach that in BMS. But then some people, like, you get to this place where some people are like, well, tapped out, hit my threshold. Mm-hmm. And you're like, there's always a new threshold. You don't stop at a certain threshold and think, I'm going to make it, I'm done here. I'm going to go over here because guess what? You didn't learn your lesson here. So you're just going to keep hitting thresholds until you learn your fucking lesson. And that's a wrap for today's show.
I love that. And I can guarantee we'll be discussing thresholds and tapping through and going farther. So thank you for joining us again. I'm so excited to be back for episode number 45 of the Big Money Stylist podcast. And we will see you guys next week.